We have not reached an agreement yesterday, but that was not we have not aimed to reach that agreement. Where we concluded is that we have to identify the principles for how timelines are being set. We have to accept that there will be case-by-case decision, but this case-by-case decision needs to be within defined timeline, defined parameters. And that would be number one task for us on the agenda for the next round of our engagements. On lending into arrears. This is a question that many of you are asking, and I want to give you the best, the most accurate answer I can. It is an option today. We have a policy of lending into arrears. We actually applied this policy in the case of Suriname. What does it mean? It means that if any creditor is yet to come with financial assurances, we are not going to hold the country hostage to this creditor. However, there are two issues. The first one is when we lend into arrears, for the country, we are actually kicking the can down the road. We are not resolving fully the debt to a sustainable level. They still have this one or more creditors that are holding, and their debt issue has to be addressed. Secondly, there is always a risk that the country might opt, after having received a support from the fund, to pay this holdout creditor, creating potentially significant moral hazard and significant difficulties to implement a fund program. It is an option that we will use when we believe there is no way to do the best one, to be in plan A. And plan A is restructure the debt and give the country breathing space to grow. And I want to be very clear on that. We would not hesitate to use our policy if and when we think that there is absolutely no chance to reach the desired outcome, which is restructure the debt of the country.
Okay. Let's turn now to Argentina. Paula.
Where is Paula?
Paula's right here in the front.
Good morning. In the last review of the program, just 2 weeks ago, the IMF said that policy implementation has become less reliable, and now Argentina is going to be in a very contentious presidential election. Are you confident the government will do what it takes to sustain the program, in particular to meet the fiscal targets? Thank you.
Let me just recognize that in the second half of last year, the Argentine authorities have worked on bringing prudent management and meeting the targets of the program. And as you know, on March 31st, our executive board completed the fourth review of the program because of what the country has done. We also know that Argentina was hit by severe drought that has undermined the performance of the economy and is harming people in the country significantly. That has complicated the job of policy makers. We have looked into the implications of this shock. We have partially accommodated those in the modification of the net international reserve accumulation target, but we recognize that we have a commitment from the government to continue to fine-tune policies in light of the conditions they find themselves into. And we will follow carefully on how successful they are. It is always about implementation, and it will continue to be about implementation in these very challenging circumstances.
Great, very good. Let's, do we have a question on Africa? Maybe we turn to Africa? Yes, okay, let's take a question on Africa. I have Julien.
Ghana, okay. Go Ghana.
Let's go with Ghana. Let's go with Ghana, please. Let's go with Ghana, please.
Very well. Thank you so much. MD, it appears that your outfit is putting out a strong case for Ghana, which is well appreciated. However, the 32 million people in Ghana right now are awaiting that announcement by your board. Please, where are we?
Let me say that we have been in constant contact with the authorities in Ghana. We have worked very hard and very swiftly to have the program for Ghana, 3 billion support program for Ghana in place. We have been urging Ghana's creditors to act swiftly. My appreciation for also the proactive role of the Minister of Finance of Ghana in reaching out to creditors. We are expecting that next week there will be discussions among creditors, and I can tell you that I use every opportunity myself to urge them to act swiftly. Let's remember that Ghana, for a long time, has done really well to tap markets to finance its growth path. It has been like all innocent bystanders hit by COVID, hit by the war in Ukraine, and it has complicated domestically the ability to finance the budget. So a country that has long track record of sound macroeconomic management ought to be supported to return to markets. So our program is a bridge for Ghana, and to tell you the truth, I'm actually quite optimistic. I think Ghana is going to move. The creditors are going to move, and we are going to move swiftly. So I guess the short answer to you is stay tuned and stay positive.
Okay, let's maybe go to this side of the room. Lady in the green in the very first row. I think right here, in the green, right here, first row. Anna.
Thank you so much. My name is Tao Xu from the China Central Television. I have two questions. The first about your trip to China. As we know, you had visited China last month. So what impressed you most in this trip? Another is about China's economy. And what are your hopes and expectations for China's economy in the next 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I had a very fruitful visit to China. It gave me an opportunity to meet with Premier Li Qiang as well as other leaders and discuss the prospects for the world economy, for China's economy, as well as the importance China has in terms of supporting low-income countries. We had discussed here the topic of debt. That was one of the issues that I was very encouraged to hear from the Chinese leadership, a commitment to constructively engage and to do its part for the countries that are pressed to restructure their debt. We have been, you asked me what impressed me the most. What impressed me was the Premier Li Chang's very clear message on China continuing to reopen and pursue in pursuit of reforms that can strengthen the prospects for China's growth. I have seen how different it is when the economy reopens. And on that basis, to answer your second question, we see China this year rebounding quite strongly. Our projection is for 5.2% growth. When I will say that in China, the Chinese leadership would say, well, that's more than we are projecting. As you know, the domestic projection is for about 5%. We have been pleased to see this rebound of China, not only for China, of course for China, but also because of China's role in the world economy. China this year is going to contribute about 1/3 of global growth. We calculated that 1% more growth in China translates into 0.3% more growth for the economies that are connected to China. This being said, there are significant challenges, and we discussed those with the Chinese leadership. Still, the issue of how to handle real estate actions are being taken, but there may be more necessary. And also how to redirect the Chinese economy more towards domestic consumption. What policies can work in that regard?
Okay, very good. While we're on Asia, let's maybe have a question on India. Gentleman right here, second row, in the middle.
Thank you, Madam Managing Director. This is Lalit Jha from PTI, Press Trust of India. India, as you know, as G20 president, has taken a lead in collectively addressing most of the global economic challenges. How do you see those efforts by India? And secondly, Madam Managing Director, President Biden has nominated Indian-American Ajay Banga as the World Bank president. How do you see this appointment as, and what are the key issues that you would like to work with Mr. Banga as the World Bank president?
Thank you for these questions. India is doing an excellent job in focusing the work of the G20 on what matters the most. What matters the most is to move through very complex policy challenges, comparing notes, and coming up with the right policy actions. What matters the most is to re-energize global growth. And here India brings its fantastic track record on digitalization and how digitalization can re-energize the economy. And also on the very serious question of debt. I want to praise the finance minister for her very active engagement in making the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable a success, as well as in India's participation in debt restructuring in cases where India plays a role. For example, the very important role India plays in the case of Sri Lanka. I very much look forward to continue to be working with the Indian presidency. To your second question, I have known Ajay for quite some time. I think very highly of his leadership skills, but above all of the commitment to inclusion and opportunities for all that he has demonstrated throughout his life. We have been together on many occasions talking about inclusion, gender, and I would always hear not only substantively somebody who is really very smart, but also a beating heart And this is what the leadership of the World Bank is all about. Vision, but also compassion.
Okay. Maybe we can take. why don't we shift now to? We'll shift now to Middle East. We'll take Pakistan, please.
You need to give the floor to Andrea. She's not going to forgive me ever if she's not given a question. Andrea, it's going to come. Where are we?
Let's start with maybe Pakistan and then Egypt.
Pakistan.
Afghanistan has a critical situation, please. As a woman, I need to ask her.
Thank you. This is Ali Khizr from Pakistan. And I really appreciate the efforts of the IMF on debt restructuring. And we talked about the few countries where the debt restructuring exercise is happening. Pakistan could be the next one in this. And it's a very big country. It's the 5th largest country in terms of population. And it's also affected by the climate. And the debt of Pakistan, unlike Ghana and Sri Lanka, is not very much market-based. It's a bilateral debt and the multilateral debt. And then the climate impact is there. And the inflation is really closing to the hyperinflation area, especially in food. And there's a challenge of the food security in coming years. So how we can learn from the experiences of Ghana, Sri Lanka, and other countries to not let that happen, what happened in these countries in the past 1 to 3 years to Pakistan.
Thank you.
I have had the opportunity to actually see what climate shock means for the people in Pakistan in 2011, and I know that the current drought is the current flood is much more dramatic than the one that I saw, that I witnessed. No question, Pakistan will continue to be on the front line of the climate crisis. And that means the country ought to think about building more resilience of communities, think about the future of agriculture in a more climate sustainable manner. But to your question, we have been working very hard with the authorities in Pakistan within the context of our current program to make sure that Pakistan has the policy framework that makes it possible to avoid what you're talking about, to get to a point when the debt of Pakistan may become unsustainable. We are not there yet, and it is better not to get there. We are currently also discussing with those who support Pakistan in terms of providing financial assurances so we can complete the program. My hope is that with the goodwill of everyone, with the implementation of what has been already agreed by the Pakistani authorities, we can complete our current program successfully.
Very good. We'll go to Egypt here in the front, and then to Andrea. Egypt, right here, front row. Front row. Please raise your hand. Yes.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, Mrs. Grigeva. I have 2 quick questions. As announced under the EFF program approved for Egypt in last December, the first review of the 3 billion loan deal was planned to be conducted on 15 of March, which paves the way for Egypt to receive the second tranche of the loan. So could you brief us on the updates on that? My second question is on debt crisis and inflation threat that place greater burdens on the developing countries. How the IMF does step up its efforts to back these countries, particularly with the huge financing gap these countries are experiencing. Thank you.
Egypt, like so many of our members, has experienced the extraordinary pressures that come from the shocks of the last years. And in the case of Egypt, very high dependency on imports of grain from the area of the war had played a particularly severe role. We have agreed on a sound program that has three critical elements. One, exchange rate liberalization. Two, increasing the opportunity for private sector to deliver jobs and growth in Egypt, expanding the role of the private sector. And three, moderate the long-term investment projects that are indeed very important and very good for Egypt. But in the current tight environment, they could undermine macroeconomic stability with the speed that was originally designed under different circumstances. We are now preparing to carry out the review. The teams are working, and I'm confident that we would have a good outcome. I want to say that we have seen in Egypt a deeper understanding of how complex not only the domestic environment is, but also the regional and global environment it is. On the question of debt, I actually talked about that quite some time. You say, what can the IMF do? What we can and we must do, and we do, is to recognize that the lending landscape has changed dramatically, but the debt resolution mechanism has not. What we have seen over the last years is the role of non-traditional creditors has increased significantly. The role of private finance has increased significantly, and yet the only well-tuned mechanism for debt resolution was the Paris Club. So if you have a small fraction of the debt covered and a big part of it not covered, that obviously is not a healthy way to deal with a growing debt problem. We take it upon us to support a more inclusive and effective debt resolution process. We have, as you remember, President Malpass and myself urged the creation of the common framework. The G20 common framework is helping, but it is not yet a place, neither it is created to be a place where principles, policies, processes can be defined. And this is our huge responsibility to our membership. Now, we cannot command the creditors, but if we create a fair atmosphere for discussion, as we have done now, then the path to resolution of problems is clearer. And of course, we finance. Let me be very clear on this point. IMF programs anchor debt resolution. And this is why it is so important that we have PRGT capabilities, because most of the severe debt problems are in low-income countries. Not only, we know Sri Lanka, we know Suriname, they are middle-income countries with debt problems, but most are in low-income countries. And I can tell you that yesterday gave me a great sense of hope when we called on our better-off members to ask them to please step up, because if the IMF doesn't have the financial capacity to contribute to debt resolution, how can we ask the others to do their part?
Very good. We're coming to the end, so we have one more question. Andrea will have the last question.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you about fragmentation in the global economy. There's been a lot of discussion about friendshoring. These are initiatives that are underway here in the United States with partner countries. Yesterday, the G7 issued a statement that talked a lot about supply chains and about building bridges with low-income and middle-income countries to expand those supply chains. It sounds a lot like fragmentation. I mean, it sounds a lot like the world is splitting into camps, and you've warned about that. Can you just say something about the G7 initiative and whether you are concerned about that and what the implications will be? Thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. What we have learned from COVID and then the war is that security of supplies and the reliable functioning of global supply chains is taking a new, higher priority seat in economic discussions and decision-making. And I regrettably have to recognize there is a reason for that. No more we can take peace for granted. Russia invading Ukraine is not only a tragedy for the Ukrainian people. It is a tragedy for the global community because it sends a message that defense expenditures have to go up, the peace dividend is gone, and that more reliance on, you call it friendship, I mean, whatever we call it, more reliability that has geopolitical dimension, not just economic dimension, is going to be sought. So, and then, of course, we also have the impact of globalization that didn't benefit everyone. We haven't been focused enough on those who were left out or behind from globalization. So there are reasons why what we see is happening. The question is, can we be more determined to enhance security of supplies, but not push the world that far that we are into a second Cold War? I believe it is possible, and actually I thought that the discussion around let's see how we can engage developing countries, how we can think about more vibrant division of labor globally, this is a good discussion. I am among those who know what are the consequences of a Cold War. It is loss of talent and contribution to the world. I don't want to see that repeated, and I think it is possible to avoid going there. We can have some costs. Remember our analysis, Andrea. It says trade fragmentation can cost us between 0.2% and 7%. That's a long way from here to there. So can we rationally accept there would be some cost, there would be some fragmentation, but keep this cost low? How can we do it? Well, there are two things. One, we have the institutions like the IMF that bring everybody around the same table. It is a place where we can build more common understanding and trust. Two, we have policymakers that ultimately need to defend the interests of their citizens. Well, if we fail to be more rational, then people everywhere would be worse off. Middle class in rich countries would pay a price as well. So a bit more cool-headedness in that process would take us a long way.
Very good.
And that was the end of our press conference, ladies and gentlemen.
This does conclude.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
This does conclude the press conference on the global policy agenda. The transcript will be available on imf.org. And a few important reminders, because I know there's still a lot of questions. First, the global debate seminar will take place today at 2 o'clock in the HQ1 atrium. And the MD will join a distinguished panel to discuss pressing topics shaping the global economy. You will have more opportunities to ask your questions. Tomorrow we will begin our regional press briefings. Actually, they begin today and they continue tomorrow. Check the schedule to attend the regional press briefing that is of interest to you. And tomorrow we will have the IMFC press briefing with the Managing Director and IMFC Chair, Nadia Calvino. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
So we have a second bite of the apple tomorrow. Thank you very much, everybody.
סורגים בצבע כסף, את לימדת אותי את זה, את היית מלכת הנשק, אני הייתי על היצע, זמן קצת מסוכן להיות